Hi everybody, glad to have you back for another Thursday Tips and Tricks. We're going to do a follow-up session today on our previous episode, where we talked about all the different methods that you're being told how to make flying geese. There were a couple questions that came in about two of the methods specifically, so I'm going to readdress those. I also am going to address a question that comes up frequently in classes and after episodes, where I talk about the nudge of squares when I'm doing my oversizing, working with my fast flying geese method. And I'm going to share with you one additional method that if you're really a rookie or really new, you might want to add to your bag of tricks, because it's going to give you the most forgiveness when you're building flying geese units. So let's get started. I'm going to get over behind the camera and drop it down. Remember that if you're going to tuckerize, there are three basic steps that you need to do. First is to recognize shapes that you see in books and patterns and magazines. Second is to analyze what they're telling you to do, how they're telling you to do it, make your changes at the beginning, and then tuckerize it, following my directive of making your shape slightly oversized, trimming them down so that every unit is perfect building block when you go to build your quilts. All right, so let's get started. Last week we talked about this method of making flying geese. It's one that you're familiar with. It's where you start with rectangles and squares, draw a line, stitch on a line, and fold it back into place. There's a very easy way to tuckerize this shape. All you need to do to tuckerize it, to know what size the flying goose is pay attention to what size they tell you to cut the rectangle. That cut size, in this case 3.5 by 6.5, is the unfinished size, or the cut size of the flying goose unit when it's completely finished. So if I find that 3.5 by 6.5, the cut size of the flying goose on there, I know it's going to finish to 3 inches by 6 inches. But these are the numbers that I would use when I go to do my tuckerizing and make my flying geese with my fast flying geese method. So that's a really simple time. Anytime you see this method, just look at the cut size and your wing clipper instructions and you'll be off and running. Now, there was another method that we talked about where they talked about using specialty rulers, or they're talking about using templates or possibly die cut shapes. Essentially what they're having you do is cut each shape individually. The large triangle and the small triangles. And knowing the math of how those sizes are figured out may help you to identify those sizes in instructions, and it may also help you to change the sizes if you ever want to change the sizes of your flying geese and follow the precision method. And here it is. If you look at a flying goose unit, it has a height and it has a width. And some patterns will tell you. This one says it's going to be 3.5 by 6.5, so that's what I used on my sample here. There's two formulas that you need to know. That long edge is the quarter square triangle unit. And what you do is you take that long edge measurement of 6 inches. You add a magic number of 1 1/4, and that gives you the 7 1/4 inch number that they're recommending that you cut for your specific, or this particular method. For those smaller half square triangles, you take the height, which in this case, the finished height, which is 3 inches. You add a different magic number, 7/8 of an inch. That gives you the 3 7/8 inch number that they're telling you to cut, so that you can cut the squares 3 7/8 in half once to create precision small triangles, half square triangles. Cut the 7 1/4 inch square in half twice to create those precision quarter square triangles. And you know, it's really not that difficult to cut precision, but what you have to remember is precision cut pieces don't always end up in precision units, because all the other construction steps must be equally perfect in order for that to happen. But knowing that little bit of math may help you decide down the road that this is not the method that I want to use, that I want to use this method. You, again, can use the math to sometimes figure out what size unit you need to end up with. Consult your instructions, your wing clipper instructions, to find the size and the starting size of the large square and the 4 small squares. So hopefully that helped clarify those questions. One of the recommendations that I make all the time when I'm doing my oversized flying geese is, slightly oversized flying geese, is to nudge the small squares. And this is what I want to talk about here. There are a lot of videos out there that talk about cutting the large square and the small squares and cutting them slightly oversized. I also recommend that you nudge those squares. Take the squares and push them toward the center so that you've got about, maybe 3 or 4 threads hanging around those outside edges. If you nudge the squares toward the center, those couple of threads, you will definitely have fabric to trim on all 4 sides. The nudge adds extra fabric on this edge. But there are a number of directions out there that let you or recommend that you oversize your squares, but then they tell you to just go ahead and line up the raw edges. If you do that, you will definitely have fabric here, here, and here. But the alignment of the raw edges means that the only thing that you have to trim off here is the dog ear, and oftentimes that ends up being short. So by nudging in those couple of threads, it will give you the little bit of extra wiggle room so that you can easily trim on all 4 sides. Now, this is what my wing clipper tool is all about and the instructions that are in there, but I still have people that don't like the nudge. They would prefer to line up the edges. So what we've done is come up with a chart and with numbers for both our wing clipper 1 and our wing clipper 2 so that you can do a no nudge method of making flying geese. The numbers are different, and that's what, and it's a little more generous, but it's absolutely no fail. If you use these numbers, our no nudge flying geese numbers, it's going to allow you to easily line up those small squares on the large square, produce your pieces slightly bigger, and give you plenty of wiggle room to trim them up. And it's only about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch more cutaway than you would have with the slightly oversized method. But both of those charts are available on our website, on our downloads page, and you can use those not just for creating the units from the wing clipper 1, but you can also use those for creating the projects using the wing clipper 2. So those are things that may help you decide which way you want to approach flying geese in the future. You know, I really do love making flying geese, and I've shot a number of videos on how to do that. The one that's probably 10, 11, or 12 years old is what a wing clipper is and how you use it. That was some of the original information. But recently in our tips and tricks, last year in August, I taped 2 other videos. One that was a lot of tips and tricks for refining your flying geese construction methods, and one for thinking about color placement with your flying geese. And those were called Truly Perfect Flying Geese, tips and tricks from Tucker team. And the other one was called More Flying Geese Secrets for Success. And of course, last week we talked about all the different methods so that you can understand what you're looking at and learn how to go ahead and do the tuckerizing. And you know, I'm going to encourage all of you, give some of these other methods a try. You know, if you've got access to different tools, and give those a try as well. The more you know about how you can do things, the more you can choose the methods, the approach, or the tools that you like to work with when you're building your projects that are going to give you the results that you're looking for. So that's it for the wing clipper. You guys take care. I'll see you in a couple weeks when we're going to talk about another deceptive shape that seems like it should be easy, but it ends up causing us more gray hairs. I'll talk to you about that in a couple weeks. Until then, take care, everybody. See you soon.